Kia ora mai tātou, kai ahau te power I tēnei wā. Ko te power tēnei, te tuku wā te reo au me inga ki tō tātou nei, naunga no Ngāti Wai. No Ngāti Wai, ka hoki mahara ki tō tātou nei, ko mātua, hori parata, ko ia anō hoki te tihi no Ngāti Wai, e manaaki hia mai rā tātou I te wā, I tau mai rā ngā tohora ki nunga te takutai o te tai hawauru. Nō reira mihi kawaki rā ki a Ngāti Wai, me whai pāranga ki tō tātou nei hui I tēnei wā, nau mahara mai aha ko kai Aotea, taku nei mōhio, pai tērā waka I te mea, no ko anō tērā o ngā waka Aotea. Nau mahara mai ki au, ki tēnei Aotea. Hara mai ki te karanga o tō tātou nei kaupapa, tatu mai rā ki ngā kōrero kua hora ke I tēnei rangi. Aha ko te ua, maro ki kai roto, maro ke I roto I tō tātou nei pauwari. Mahana, me pēnei ke te ki. Mahana, nau mahara mai, te whanaunga, tauti mai rā ki te reke o tō tātou nei maunga taranaki, tatu mai rā ki tō tātou nei awa waitara, e rere kau nei I te au I te pō, nau mahara mai, whakatau mai rā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Kia ora mai tātou.
Kia ora Tama. Welcome. It's lovely to have you here, and I'll get both you and Manu to come up and do your kōrero. I haven't quite figured out what the order. Is it the bro first and then you? All right. Oh, well, me whakahoki te kōrero kia nātou.
Tēnā rā tātou katoa. Tuatahi ko Ao, ko Tama Toki Ao Hou, I tupu mai I te tātaku tōku kuia me tōku karaua, kei tō tātou nei mautere ko Aotea. Te ingoa. Tuaroa, pēr, he mihi o ki ngā tangata kua hui mai nei kei konei ki te whakapiti whakaaro, toha kōrero, hei whainga ara, whainga hurahi tika ki te hāpai ake ai, whakapākari ai hoki te iwi Māori, tō tātou nei hapu hoki. Wai hoki, ngā tangata kua whakatū te rānei, ngā kai whakahaere, ngā kai whakarite, te haukainga hoki, He Ahi Kā, te mana whenua, tēnā te mihi maioha mahana kia koutou katoa. Thank you very much for receiving me so warmly, and I apologise if my introduction isn't as well polished and well versed, but I really appreciate the opportunity to get up and speak in front of you all. So yeah, my name is Tama. I'm from Great Barrow Island. I grew up there with my whānau there. And I think for today's kōrero, I'll be talking to three things really. Number one, what has inspired our journey and why we have built a business called Aotea Energy, and why we're building batteries and computers to run them and to communicate with them, or with each other and with neighbours. Number two, I'll just touch on the broader landscape with regard to what's actually happening around energy insecurity, grid instability, and why, despite the challenge, there's actually an opportunity for, in particular, those in rural areas to actually innovate, as I say, take this opportunity to perhaps leapfrog all the issues that the main grid's having at the moment. And last, I'll touch on the product and maybe a quick little plug with regard to what we've been building and how maybe what we're doing might be able to help, and our experience as well growing up on Aotea. So for those that don't know, Aotea is a Māori name from Great Barrow Island. So yeah, it's the Ngāti Wai territory, but there's no utility or grid there for electricity. So we've grown up with diesel generators, batteries and solar our whole, I suppose, lives, if that makes sense. But it's interesting because you, almost through osmosis, you understand the challenges around intermittent generation, the importance of batteries, and as I say, without a utility grid or a third-party retailer, you can kind of leapfrog and start to innovate. And this is kind of where our journey started. And just for a bit more context, our core business is called Aotea Health, and we manufacture a whole range of skincare products. And so it's all done on Aotea. So we've got a big distillery, we've got hives and the rest of it. And that's kind of where our inspiration started. We had to lay a big battery bank and a big solar array to run the facility. But then when you're not using it, you're just using, all these surplus electrons are just kind of trying to find somewhere to go. And as I say, that's kind of, we just thought after we built everything, we could just lay a big cable just to feed the homes. But we need to know three things really. Number one, who needs the power? Number two, when? And number three, and importantly, how much? I wonder if this is going to play. But and this is actually the kind of like topography, if you like, of the island. But it's not as easy as just laying a cable. You have to set the backbone of the grid and firm it. Set the frequency and the voltage. Things like batteries are important, but you also need things like inverters that can manage and that can fill and firm up the grid. And if we had known how hard it would have been, we wouldn't have really started. And so just for context, we're halfway through completing a peer-to-peer grid. So on the Papakainga there, putting one of our systems in every home, and then they're smart enough to talk to each other, figure out state of charge and generation potential as well, and then figure out who's in deficit, who's in surplus. It's been a real journey, and we're lucky that we've had this other business that's kind of allowed us to have free cash flow to invest into it. But the whole mandate has really been to reduce energy poverty, and even the price of diesel on the island and petrol is like $4 a litre, and a lot of our whanaunga are going. There's a bit of hardship there, and I've got to be careful I don't kind of keep on going on because I might bore everyone. But this is kind of the underlying inspiration for what we're doing. And what we are doing is building batteries, by the way, batteries and computers to send power, but I'll come to that later. And just for context, I think, and maybe changing tack just very quickly, other than population growth, the most important factor or contributing factor to GDP growth is actually access to affordable energy, including hydrocarbons and also electricity. And there's a direct correlation between energy consumption and wealth. And what's really interesting is this country at the moment, there's upward pressure on prices, and there's the downward pressure on our economy, which makes things really, really difficult. Everything we consume is embodiment of energy, and the cheaper that energy is, the easier to manufacture, the easier it is to send things places and things like that. But I quite like kind of bringing this up when I have the privilege to speak, and because this is, I think, a really important thing that is a big challenge for the whole country. But as I say, despite these problems, I think there's a real opportunity for the country to display thought leadership, to innovate. And as I say, I kind of forget which slides are which at the moment. I mean, these are things we all know. The grid must double in capacity. There's, needing new generation. All these kind of themes that we read about in the news all the time. Again, growing up without electricity and being kind of tied to intermittent generation. Solar's great, but you need batteries. And then if you have batteries that are programmable, that have a computer on them, they can do all the things you need them to do. That's what we see as being a really important thing for the country. And one interesting statistic, in terms of grid firming, I think it's 2 megawatts per million in this country, and Australia has 1,350 megawatts per million for grid firming. And so our country has a really unstable grid. Anyway, these are things that, I kind of don't want to get too boring, but this is quite interesting. So batteries and solar, the levelized cost of energy is now, and this is actually from last year, I think we put this in there, so it's even, price of batteries and solar is even below the curve that you see there. And that means that it's cheaper to put batteries and solar in than it is to actually build any kind of centralized generation plant. And that's where I think our communities in the rural areas can actually start to spearhead and break ground on this. And what's interesting, the Pacific Islands are moving the fastest in this direction because they're out of necessity. They've had to get batteries and solar, and they've had to kind of shore up their own energy access. And I think that, as I say, places like Aotea and places throughout the motu are kind of really, really good opportunity for us to kind of do some cool things. And this is the other thing too, batteries and storage. I think it's a revolution that's taking place. And I'll come to maybe a bit more detail. I'm kind of not too sure exactly how. So for maybe the third and last part of what I'll be talking to, we've built, lab-tested, fully compliant NZ733, so 3777 compliant batteries. So 15 kilowatt hours. We've got our first 20 that have gone out with that we manage under assets under management. But we own the whole stack, the whole tech stack. So we own the battery, the kind of electronics layer, and also the software that allows them all to talk and triangulate. If you're grid tied, as an example, it can figure out a generation. It's got the policies in the back end to understand historical trends and norms, but also what the price is in the wholesale market. And that's it there. So that's 15 kilowatt hours. And that's, kind of the average kind of home kind of is 20 kilowatt hours of. So this here, even without solar, can take over most of the loads, even without solar, as I say, in terms of energy density. But we've got our first 20 that have been sold, and it's really, really cool because we also are an electricity retailer. So we're managing it for them, and we're giving them access to the wholesale market, giving them the spread so they can buy at low, sell it high, ideally. And it comes bundled with a software stack. So these are all things that we've built. So it's sorry, it feels like this is this is almost like an informal plug. But where I'm getting to is, and these are the grid-tied systems if it plays. But if you're grid-tied, and actually the sites that we have live are outperforming even our best assumptions, and the Electricity Authority has verified these numbers for us, we can actually cut the average power bill in half. We're quietly really excited with what we've done. But I think where I maybe I might just go back just for context and finish on this last point. I think the tools that we've built have, if you have a community in a cluster of homes, and in fact, there's actually a trend happening in Auckland at the moment. It's called grid defecting, I think, where people are getting solar and batteries, and they're like, we don't want to do anything with the grid. We don't want any exposure, and apparently it's growing quite quickly. And again, not to plug once more, but our batteries are half the price of what you find throughout the country. So the average cost per kilowatt hour is about $1,000, and ours costs about $500 fully installed. And the reason why I think this is important is because there are these immutable laws of physics when it comes to how you get return on investment, and the magic number in our eyes is 6 years, and the asset lasts for a lot longer than that. But sorry to kind of keep on going on a tirade here, but if you had a hapu or that, and they had the desire to run their own system, and again, this is coming from our experience, we aren't far away from having the tools that we would like to figure out how to actually make accessible to all Māori so they can run their own energy system. We can give the license of being a retailer. We can give the battery. Obviously, solar is, it's energy agnostic, so solar, you can get from anywhere. But our battery and our computer that sits on it, it can speak to your neighbor so it knows what's happening in terms of their state of charge and whether or not they're in deficit. It knows whether or not you're in surplus, and it can start to figure out who to send power to. And we can do this, and this is true energy sovereignty and mana motuhake, excuse me, and that's something that really drives us as a business. And that is something, we've sort of stress tested. We actually haven't laid the cables between the homes on the island because we've got to do all this compliance and civil work, but we are really excited around the place that Māori have with regard to, again, innovation is the mother of necessity, sorry. Is that right? Necessity is the mother, one of the two, I think, ways to kind of just, that turn of phrase. But, and there's, as I say, there's a world where with, the dwellings or businesses that have solar and batteries, but with our license that we actually give and operate on your behalf, you can run your own grid. And that's something that I think is a really inspiring, thought for us. And we're not far away from finishing it. But if you want to see anything else, just Google Aotea Energy and we come straight up. You can see our website. But the true mandate is to find ways for rural communities to actually have their own energy sovereignty, because that's kind of where we come from. But I'll leave it there. It's been a real privilege to speak again. So kia ora rā tātou. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm just going to ask, there's a gift that's coming, but we've got some questions, I'm certain, coming forward. You've got some pātai? Cool. I'll go to Uncle Mike and then I'll come back to you, Holly. Coming.
Tēnā. It wasn't working. Oh, okay. So we've got one of my marae is in Ngā Rauru, but none of our whānau stay close to the marae. So the majority would stay in Whanganui or in Waverley. How could we get this to work for that scenario? And actually, our whānau that stay around the whole of Aotearoa, can that work in that system?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. What's interesting with the market is that when you have from solar and it goes into the grid, every electron's fungible. And you know, when you buy from the grid and you're buying from Genesis or at Contact, you're not buying that exact electron. There's a fungible electron that can
And so just for our whānau, fungible means...
Sorry, I don't even know what that means. Fungible is like, oh God, I may have to Google it. But it's not like for like or kind of apples with apples. It's just this electron goes into the, let's say water goes into a pool, and when you're drawing from that pool, you're not getting that molecule of H2O or whatever. You're just getting, but there's a ledger that kind of records it all. And it's like, I think fungible is kind of the whole Bitcoin distributed ledger, NFT speak. But no, it's a really valid question, because how do you kind of incentivize solar and battery uptake if they're not, if they can't actually have control over their electrons and sell when they like to sell them, kind of thing? And we did play around with this idea. Can you have, let's say I've got my kāinga and Tamaki Makoto and you've got yours. Can we enter into a contract where I can supply you? And the big guys do it. Like the big generators have PPAs. So why can't, if you have a license, because we've got an electricity license, why can't there be a peer-to-peer network that the grid can facilitate? But again, it's just the whole rigmarole of the electricity authority and just the code as well. But having said that, if you get to a more concentrated area, depending on how they've kind of laid everything out, if you've got one feed that goes into a whole community, you can set an embedded network or a microgrid that it sits adjacent to the grid. And that's what we're doing on Aotea. So every single home on our Papa Kāinga has a battery, and we're laying an AC cable between every inverter, and then they get our logic so they can figure out who to send power to. And then ideally we can, for the first year it's all going to be free, but then the marae and the trust can actually maintain it. You can educate people to learn about how to understand how to use it, and they become engineers and electricians. And then you've got some asset that you can start to actually run, and you're not getting the margin kind of sucked away from the big guys and the transpower. I mean, every single kilowatt hour that we get, 9% of our bill is because of transpower. So how come if you have spent the money and you've got the energy and you put on rooftop solar and batteries into your own area, how come transpower still gets to clip the ticket on that? And the low voltage network, those things I think need to change. But as I say, I don't want to kind of hijack everything, but Aotea Energy, you can find all the details and you can get in touch, and happy as to give more context, because truly I think these rural areas are the areas that can actually spearhead this. There's less red tape. I mean, when we started, we didn't ask the electricity authority, or we just started doing it, kind of thing, and that's kind of how I think it's good.
Kia ora.
Start.
Will, and then Holly.
Awesome, Tama, and I guess if I'm understanding it right, at the moment your folks' system is for Papa Kāinga or communities that are close with each other, right? At the moment?
Yeah. We've got some assets on Aotea, but we've also got about 10 in Auckland. Oh wait, there's 8 in Auckland. There's one in Christchurch. There's one in Taupo, I think.
Do they interact?
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They just interface with the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the moment, the electricity authority that they control the regulations, they're consulting right now about the regulations, the code. And there's a little bit of work that's going on there called PIP, the Power Innovation Pathway. So there's a bit of a work stream going on asking some of these questions now. So, and it's incumbent on our iwi and the larger organisations that have the resources to be able to put together a consent, an application to places like PIP to be able to break open the bigger game and enable our people and companies like Aotea to do their magic.
Hey Manu, have I got that all right, by the way? Is what I said like strictly legal? No. yeah.
So next question before I hand across to you, Holly. If whānau would like to put their hand up to use the product, what do they need to do to get in touch with you to make that happen?
Yeah, we're quietly launching at the moment. We don't want to broadcast everything, but I mean, a short answer is on the website. Yeah, just kind of why am I, and we're keen to see how we can help. There's like various entities that support and help facilitate concepts like this because it's pretty innovative. In fact, we actually are one of the few companies on planet Earth building the whole stack. And there's only one that I've heard of in Texas that there's effectively a battery retailer. And Michael Dell Computers, his son started it, and they just raised $1 billion like a month ago. So it's kind of scary that that's kind of like the world that's beginning to exist. But anyway, where I'm going with this is I think there's various entities and groups that actually would be really interested in pioneering with us and on various Māori reservations, especially if it allows us to practice the principles of He Ahi Kā and mana motuhake, if you know what I mean.
So that's an opportunity and an invitation to get it on the ground level before Tama becomes a multi-billion-dollar company.
No, we're still in business. No.
Yeah, but in regards to us, so if you've got a project or a kaupapa that you think would like to put your hand up, I think it's a great time to do so. Particularly great use cases for Aotea Energy, but equally for you to actually have a practical pathway for mana motuhake over energy as well. Holly, last question.
My question's around AI and if you use it and how you think it's going to impact the industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. So there's like a difference between machine learning and LLMs. I mean, both of them kind of figure things out by way of pattern recognition and kind of like just massive compute. We have machine learning, which is the same thing. So to the extent that it starts to understand certain patterns a bit better, demographics of the home, state of charge, like kind of curves and things like that. AI, yeah, it's such a weird thing at the moment. But I mean, there are certain, again, it's kind of algorithms. But what's really driving it are these huge data centers that can give huge amounts of compute. So we can do things so quickly. And these, I think it's like RS300s or whatever from NVIDIA that are facilitating this massive compute. So we can just do things way faster and, yeah, I suppose just figure things out. But there is still daylight between, kind of AGI, which is, I think, is it AGI? General intelligence, artificial general intelligence. And then kind of what but we've within the stack, we've got a like machine learning takes care, it gets smarter and smarter and smarter. And maybe to kind of finish off, does that answer your question, Holly? Is that kind of it's going to destroy everything now. But I think maybe just to summarize, and riffing off what you just said, Holly, the underlying architecture we think is batteries, some level of centralized generation, rooftop solar, let's say, and then the smarts. So it's the underlying architecture. So if, let's say, the Hokainga here, we're like, look, we've got a cluster of 20 homes. We want to run our own grid. You can put our systems in there. We would give you access via a portal to monitor everything. And then you're literally trading and managing the flow of electricity between every single home with all rooftop generation. And then you've got your own true sovereignty. And I know these guys have been talking about trying to flexible response and all that kind of stuff, but ours is the most flexible. In fact, I wish I had in part of the presentation some of our sites live, because there's a trading page on the app that allows you to see when you're exporting to the grid, when you're buying from the grid, and it's kind of overlaid with the wholesale price. Anyway, long story short, yeah.
Oh, just a question. The policing of all the stuff. The technology is that tricky these days. You're trying to figure out, as a customer, which button to push.
Hard up, yeah.
Which button to push. So how does this get monitored to know that we're on the right track, or getting the right gear?
Yeah, are you saying? Let's say you had this set up. So everything comes with like it doesn't even show on here. Are you talking about if you were running and maintaining your own electricity grid for?
Well, there's lots of salesmen out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lots of salesmen.
What
I'm saying is trying to understand what's going on for our people, especially the ones that are sitting here.
Yeah.
Because I think, that's why I want to ask the question. How does this thing get policed in what you're talking about?
No, it's such a
And I think
valid-
it's really, because I've made a couple of mistakes because, like I talked about my roof of my house. The bloody thing was on the wrong side. What could have been-
The array was on the wrong side.
Yeah, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it wasn't for money to say, hey, it's on the wrong. Oh, wow, you know what I mean?
I've heard that so many times.
Yeah, and that's what I worry about. I'm not trying to hold you down to this. You probably haven't got the answer, but the answer can be within us. Who are we dealing with?
I think it's such a valid, point to make. With Solar Zero, I mean, there were so many stories of, salesmen, like literally door knocking, trying to sell product, promise the world, and heaps of stories as you describe it. And, and then they couldn't sell their house because the array was a lien on the house and all these issues. But then, that's not our problem. It's your problem to figure out. We actually we're not really involved in solar. We don't really touch it. Our whole thing is storage and management of your electricity in the house. Yeah, I mean, there have been so many examples of really kind of unorthodox or underhanded or nefarious salespeople just pushing product, and then it just doesn't. And then all of a sudden there's an issue, and that's not our problem. And that's kind of, I mean, not to, again, who knows what's proof's always in the pudding. But when we put a product, we put a battery in your house, we have like a lifetime commitment to maintaining it, making sure that we can access it. We read every single cell, voltage on every single cell in the battery. And the whole idea is that we like the idea of it being an infrastructure asset, that either it's for the, as I said, the mana whenua, or for homeowners that aren't Māori, let's say, that want their own battery system, but they want to be able to have sovereignty and all the rest of things that we want. I mean, this might sound quite utopian, but ideally, let's say we get a customer, we are their retailer, they're with us for life. That's the whole thing for us, because when we've got about 20 systems up and running, and because we manage it for them, and because we're sending power in and out of the house from the grid, we want to maintain that, and we're incentivized to do it as well, because we get to manage the asset and all the rest of it. But even this afternoon, I got a call with someone asking questions about the system and blah, blah, blah. But it's like lifetime relationship. I know it sounds really, really odd, but we want to make sure that everything that goes out there is maintained. The payback period is within 6 years, the asset lasts to 24. And if it doesn't last 24, we maintain it. I mean, on the website, you'll see we've got guarantees. And our lawyers you should not have guarantees on the website. But that is something that is really, really important for us. I mean, we don't want to be another, God forbid. Yeah. I really appreciate the question, actually. It's really good. Sorry, it feels like I go on and on.
Kia ora, Tom, and last question here. Maybe last. My thinking is, I'm just thinking that, and it's in terms of the scalability and the scale down, scale up type of thing. But am I right to thinking that with your power solution, say, and power generation solution, that, say, you could be a small iwi, you could have a marae that you run off this solution. You could, say, have 2 wee developments of homes, Kamatua flats, whatever, maybe 4 or 5 on a couple of blocks. And you could be a power generator across that matrix of
That's exactly
Not
right.
necessarily Papakaina, but
No, that's
Papakaina.
I mean, to use the example, yeah, exactly. It can be any configuration of homes or whatever.
And then you could scale up from that.
And you can scale up from there.
And we leverage off your authority as a
that's exactly right.
license provider.
I mean, no, that's bang on. I mean, on the island as an example, we start off with the marae, and then the kaumata kuia kind of dwellings, and then they kind of anchored the grid, and then we're still yet to run a cable from our system because it's too far away. And the idea is if people are away, the whole system's smart enough to, okay, sweet, I'm just going to send any spare kilowatt hour to the neighbours. Similarly, if there's a hui on and there's quite a bit of load, then the whole system kind of kicks in and facilitates that as well. So it's a dynamism and that management in a programmable sense across all the dwellings. So effectively, if you've got 10 homes with 10 batteries, and you've got one generator that's distributed, and then we can manage it for you. And also if it's going across boundary lines, because we've got a retailer's license, ideally we pass that on to you so you can actually operate as a gentailer. That's the whole thing. Sorry, I should have said that. the whole anchor, the whatu for this is we provide the tools and the licenses to operate as a gentailer. Whether it be one home in Auckland, they've got generation and storage and they've got retailing license, they can arbitrage the grid, or if it's a whole collection of homes that in aggregation can operate as a gentailer as well. That's the whole thing, because I mean we're kind of sick of what's going on throughout the country in terms of just being at the whim of pricing and stuff.
Yeah. Kia ora. Just in terms, take note of your isolation on an island. But I can resonate with Great Barrier. We put the water in.
Oh, okay.
Or Cyclone, is it?
Yeah, Trifena. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I can just say now, if anything down to transportation of the gear,
Yep.
it was very expensive. So how did you get around that? So I'm just in case there are similar,
Yep. Yep.
rural areas.
Yeah.
Isolated.
We were lucky because being from there, we've got like already set up kind of like, and because we manufacture a whole bunch of stuff there as a family, we kind of, we have like, the boat and like kind of lorries and all the rest of it but it's a mission, especially we're from, so Trifena's in the south, the Māori res is in the north. So if we take the boat, it's literally a 5-hour ferry and then 3-hour drive to get to where we are. So it's a remote place, part of a remote island. But that's when you have that remoteness, that's also I think kind of the secret sauce, because it means that it's actually cheaper. It's called the last mile, right? Sorry, I'm just boring right now, but it's cheaper to, rather than laying big cables from the medium voltage or high voltage network, you kind of just do that yourself, and that's where I think there's some real opportunity for those like Māori that are keen to look at this. And I mean, the most important thing is that it's seen as something that facilitates all the mana whenua operating a gentailer of their own, and that's what we want to do. And as in give that to provide that. Cool.
All right. Aroha, thank you, brother.
Sweet.
So for those of you that are super nerdy like Tama, I think there's a beautiful gift for you from Ngaiwi o Taranaki. But if any of you are super interested in the product,